Hello friends, it's Jayma Malme. Welcome to another scrapbook process video. Today I'm creating a double page layout using some of my sister and her family's Hawaii photos for the album I've been working on. Now this is an 8.5 by 11 album and I'm super excited because the creative design team and I have just released the 8.5 by 11 sketchbook, and there are tons of sketches in here that you can use. There are 42 sketches, 21 double page layouts, or if you wanted to use them as single page layouts, you could, for a total of 42 pages. So I have a collaboration video planned for Friday. We're all creating videos this week using this sketchbook to give you lots of inspiration and show you how awesome it is. So my official collab video is on Friday, but I just couldn't wait to dive in. I've been wanting to use this Dreammaker paper for this Hawaii album because look at how perfect this paper is with these pictures. So I decided to kind of jump the gun and start early. So my official collab video will be in a couple of days. Now, she sent me this panoramic photo and I wasn't quite sure how to use it, but I did print it on an 8.5 by 11 piece of photo paper. I used an app that my friend Erin uses called Print to Size. It's not what I typically use to print my photos, but it works out perfectly for this because you can set the size of your paper to 8.5 by 11 and then drop your photo in there and just put it where you want it. So I had it printed down here, and then I've got the rest of my photo paper that I can use, cut it up to 4 by 6 or 3 by 4 if I wanted to in my normal printer. I typically use my Epson printer, but for this one I used my larger photo printer. I thought it would be fun to have this span across the whole page, so I'm going to try to work that in. Now, I mentioned I'm using this Dreammaker paper. I've used this in my last few videos. I just absolutely love this paper. It is so pretty, and the colors are just perfect with these photos. So I'm thinking that I'm going to use these ones as my base pages and kind of have the yellow in the opposite corner. Obviously, I'm going to have to cut them down a little bit because these are 12 by 12. But those are going to be the base pages. I'll play around with those in a little bit. And then I selected a few other papers from that collection. Now in my last video, I went into detail about how I select papers to set aside for my layout. So I'm not digging in the whole paper pack. I'm just kind of making a selection, and I showed kind of what I look at and how I determine what to choose. So these are what I've selected. I was trying to work from a lot of the scraps that I have left first, and then I thought I might want to bring in some of this lemonade yellow. We also have Sundance, Periwinkle, and Glacier, and so I don't think that I want to use this a lot because this background paper has lemonade, and so I feel like it's a little bit clashing with that. But in this sunset photo, we have so many different yellows, so I'm thinking I might bring it in just in small doses just to kind of help bring out this sunset, make this photo pop, and not clash with this yellow. And then these other ones, I may use the marbleized side of this cardstock. The opposite side is just a plain, like a lighter shade of the cardstock, just plain. So I'm thinking I might flip some of those over so we don't have too much pattern going on. But that's kind of my thoughts as I'm going in. Now the sketch that I'm working from is actually the first one in here. So let me flip to that. There's some intro pages here. And then if you look at the sketch, we've got everything labeled and the dimensions to cut everything are right down here. So all of the guesswork is taken out for you. Now I like to do my own thing a lot of times, use a sketch as inspiration, as a jumping off point. It definitely is helping me with my photo placement in this case because I've got my 4 by 6 and 3 by 4 photo that are, the same kind of location. So I want them to go on the page together like this. Now this is a 3x3, but I'm going to kind of scoot this under there and it will just stick out a little bit more than the 3x3 and it will still work. So when you're looking at sketches and if your photos don't match up perfectly, don't worry. Just kind of finagle them and work them in to make sure that they work for you. So this other page, we've got 3x3 photos, and I have a 4x6 and 3x4 left. So I'm imagining this to be kind of taking the place of these 3x3 photos, and then this one's going to take the place of that 3x3 photo. So it will just be a little bit different configuration, a little bit taller, a little bit narrower because you don't have that gap in between. And then I'll still put my journaling here, or I could move this over here and add my journaling here. I think it kind of is just going to depend on how it all shakes out. So now you may be wondering, well, what are you going to do with this panoramic photo? And I think I'm going to have it span across kind of like these banner pieces are right here. So I think I was actually playing with this. If I have this situated here, have this kind of peeking out, and I'm going to have to matte my photos in something else too. I already matted these in white because that's just typically what I do, especially with a lot of color or darker colors in the background. I really like my photos on white so that they pop, and I'm pretty sure that my background is going to be a color. This is just that photo paper right now. So I'll add like a border here to separate this photo from these and have these kind of like this. And then I'm thinking I'll have something popping out the bottom, because if I have this photo going across the bottom here, I don't have one going across on the other side. So if we have another page right here, it's going to look funny if this is just blank. So what I think I'm going to do is have a strip going across here, not necessarily this one. I don't like that up against the blue on the blue. But imagine this going across all the way and then going across on this side. So it gives that continuity all the way across. So that's kind of the direction I'm going. And then I can have a different patterned paper going like this. So I don't know exactly how it's going to pan out until I cut these down and start cutting paper and playing, but that is kind of my jumping off point and my thought process, and this sketch here has definitely given me a jumping off point, and I can start cutting some of my papers to these dimensions that are listed here. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to bring in 2 Versamats here to work on. Even though they are 12 by 12, I want to work on them because they do really help me line things up. And I'm going to adhere them down just so that they don't shift. Sometimes I tape them, sometimes I don't. I guess this time I decided to. But especially since they aren't the exact size, I just wanted them to stay in place there. So that will come up really easily with my rub and remove eraser at the end. Now I've cut these background papers to 8.5 inches wide, but I'm waiting to cut the length because some of it's going to be covered up and I don't want to waste what's going to be behind that long photo there. And I'm also thinking that I want more yellow to show. So there's a lot of yellow hidden behind that panoramic photo right now. So I'll crop that so that there's a little bit more above the photo. Now on the right side, I want the bottom to look like it's the same piece of paper going all the way across, but I want the yellow in the top right corner so that it's opposite of the yellow that's in the bottom left corner. So I trimmed 1 inch off and then flipped the rest upside down so that we have that effect, and then I'll use some paper to kind of hide that. Now I cut another 1 inch on the other side, and that way I've got more yellow popping out from behind that panoramic photo. And then in just a little bit, I'll kind of mark and trim the top off. Now I'm getting my photos situated again just to kind of figure out what other papers I want to add. I did trim a few papers based on the dimensions in the sketchbook. I've got this stripe pattern here, and that's what I'm going to use on the other side in place of the photo. But I want a little bit to stick down so that I can have a tiny bit on the left side of the photo too. I want to add a little bit under this panoramic photo just so that it doesn't look out of place to have the stripe photo on one side and not the other. Kind of a rule of thumb if you're doing a double page layout is what you do to one side, you want to do to the other, even if it's in a little bit different way, like use the same colors, use the same patterns, use the same types of embellishments, and so that's what I'm doing here. Now, this was a really pretty viney paper, and I love that the scrap I had was just the right colors. I'm bringing in a little bit of that orangey color, like I mentioned. I think this is actually the nectarine, not the Sundance that's in this paper, but I really like how it brings out the sunset in that photo on the right. And this is cut to size according to the sketch, but since my orientation on my page is just slightly different, I have a taller photo than the pieces in the sketch called for where that pattern paper is. I cut it and extended it a little bit below the photo so it's larger than 6x8. And then I did the same thing to the other side, bringing that same paper and color over there. I wanted to add a little bit of separation between these papers and the photo, and so I thought just a very skinny line of black would do just the trick. This is just 3/16 of an inch, and I think that is just the perfect amount. The embellishments and some of the accents from this collection are black, and so I really like how it makes everything pop. And once I got these borders down, I thought, you know what, I think I'm going to matte my photos in black too. That's going to make them really pop. So I did a few mattes, and I did just a 1/16 inch border all the way around. So I cut them to 1/8 of an inch larger than my white mat. My white mats are 3x4 and 4x6, so I had trimmed my photos down just a little bit. When working with an 8.5 by 11 page, you are much more limited in space than a 12 by 12, so a lot of times I will trim my photos smaller to fit onto a 4x6 or 3x4 mat. So I added a little journaling box to fill that space over on the right and create that grid. And now I'm marking where the top of my page is going to be, and I'll just trim that down. I'll get that back in place here, and then I think I'm happy with where everything's at, but I want to ink around the edges of my papers to make sure that they stand out against each other. I thought about using black, but since these papers are pretty soft colors and I've already got some bold black accents, I decided to use charcoal to make it just a little bit softer. I'll be adding more black accents in my embellishments, so I wanted these to have enough to stand out, but not too much. And so hopefully you can see here that made a big difference. So I'll get the rest of these inked and everything adhered. And here we go, ready to embellish. So I mentioned in my last video, I have these leaves always on hand. I have a bunch of these lagoon leaves. I've been using them a lot in these Dreammaker layouts, and I think that they just work so well. I had one more of these black paperboard pieces that came in the embellishment pack. So I think it looks good down in that corner. And then I'm going to add a bunch of flowers. This comes from the Dreammaker stamp set, and I think that they look kind of tropical. I've seen Erin do some of her Hawaii layouts with this paper and these flowers, and they do look very tropical. I colored them off camera because I did it in the same way that I did in my last two videos. So if you missed those, I will leave them linked at the end of this video. I stamped the color on, so it was super easy, and then just trimmed them out. I've created a visual triangle with my embellishment clusters, and I have the embellishment clusters in similar places as the sketch tells me. And I just made sure I had each color represented in each of the clusters to draw your eye around the page. The colors I used are Lemonade, Sundance, and Periwinkle. So I think that this is the perfect amount of that kind of orangey yellow color to draw out the colors in that sunset. I went back and forth about what to title this page. I wanted it to do something about the location, and I was texting my sister asking a couple questions, and she wasn't responding, so I was like, okay, I need to take matters into my own hands. And then I remembered that there's this lovely day title that is in the embellishment pack for Dreammaker, and it worked out perfectly. I didn't have to do a location-based title like I was thinking, and I think that this ends up fitting perfectly. I even like how day fits and has that little swoopy Y going down into the photo. I think it looks really good. There are a few dragonflies in the embellishment pack, and I wasn't sure if I would like it, but I really like how that looks. I added a few trailing hearts, and I think that's going to finish off the little black accents that I need. Now I wanted to add a little bit of splatter with some stamps. Now typically in my scrapbooks I will use shimmer brush to add splatters, but believe it or not, my sister doesn't like glitter. She doesn't like sparkle. I know, I don't know how we're related, but I didn't want to add the glitter and sparkle. I did on some of her other layouts, but I thought, you know what, I am just going to do stamping with the splatter. And then this also shows you if you're scared to do splattering and you want it to be more controlled, this is a really good way to do it. Now, at first I thought I might use the background element stamp, but I decided I wanted to stick to just this small little splatter stamp that comes in the Dreammaker stamp set. And I just did a few little splatters in each of the clusters, and I think it adds just the perfect little detail and extra black accent. I went around and curled all of the leaves and flowers just like this with my fingers to give them a little bit of lift, and I'm going to do that off camera and get everything glued down. And then we'll be back to look at the details close up. Now, after I recorded this, I realized there was a big smudge on my camera. So now look at how clear everything is and how bright. The colors are so much more vibrant and vivid. If you want to see still shots of this layout, I have those over on Instagram and Facebook. They are linked down below. I put some of those flowers up on 3D foam tape. I just really like how this turns out, and I think that my sister is going to love it too. If you would like your very own copy of this sketchbook, I have that linked down in the description below. And if you want to see another layout idea using the Dreammaker collection, that's on screen for you to click right here. I'll see you over there. Have a great day. Bye.